Birds of Passage, a memoir. There was a crooked man, and he walked a crooked mile. He found a crooked sixpence upon a crooked stile. Pretty soon the crooked man got himself a wife, who became crooked too. It was part of that life. And she got herself a child, all the way to number 9. And they were crooked too, as they stood there in a line. The song seemed to go on forever, from mouth to crooked mouse, as we all lived together in that cracked and crooked house. Chapter 1, Beginnings. Write a story about growing up? Why in hell would I want to do that? That requires opening the door, that immense, heavy, menacing separation between today and everything that happened as a child. I have spent years laboring to keep that door bolted shut, but I couldn't. Some force beyond me, beyond reason and understanding, kept pushing it open. I don't want to look. I don't want to see. I don't want to remember what is behind that door. I want to keep pretending that today doesn't have anything to do with yesterday. I remember falling down the mountainside, my red-chapped hands both hot and cold as the crusty packed snow rushed hard against my bare palms, scraping my legs, tearing at my cheeks. It had been sunny there on the top before I stumbled, and now I was plunging into the darkness, falling farther and farther away from the light. "Help me, Mommy, help me." I wanted to cry out. Where was she? Could she even hear me? I had stopped falling, all alone now in a crumpled heap at the bottom of a crevasse. High above me, I could see the sky, a narrow ribbon of blue so far away. "I'm afraid. Help me." I screamed and screamed. Somewhere above me on the steep mountainside, an avalanche had begun. Mother that was not a person, Father that was not human. There are no questions. There is only waiting. The child cannot face the memory. Blind-eyed, I see the past. The mother cannot stop it. She will not see. Daddy's houses were always scary, usually mouse-infested with strange, unidentifiable noises. One night when I was staying alone with him in the spare bedroom of his rented house, I heard horrible scratching noises coming from the walls, even it seemed from beneath my bed. Too terrified to sleep, I considered the possibility of going into his bedroom for comfort. What could be worse, I wondered? Staying alone in my bed trying to shut out all the awful sounds, or asking Daddy if I could sleep with him? Both options seemed equally dangerous, but finally in desperation I tiptoed into his room and crept carefully into the bed. The next morning he was startled to find me on the other side of the mattress, lying motionless, straight as a board. I hadn't slept all night. Green Acres during the 1950s and 60s was unlike any suburb in America. Simultaneously ahead of the times and seriously behind them, it knew little of the nuclear family, June Cleaver moms, or kitchens filled with newfangled appliances. Rather, it was a veritable poker flats of misfits, felons, alcoholics, abandoned cars, treadled sewing machines. And did I mention the chronically unemployed? Notable among Greenacreites was Oral Fraker, our 88-year-old neighbor whose bed we inherited after his death. We called it the TB bed because Oral had died of tuberculosis. With 9 children and only 4 beds in our house, at lights out, we all scrambled to claim our places in the safer beds, knowing the slowest and last would be left to crawl uneasily beneath the covers of the fatally infected TB bed. Chapter 2, Sun Running. This memoir is a journey, a remembered vision of a time reeling with horror, joy, pain, and inquisitiveness. A grand guignol tableau spinning out more questions than answers for a young mind, desperately seeking order. How aptly this term references the anchoring theme of our past. Original to Paris of 1897, it is a genre of theater specializing in horror, brutality, and insanity, translated as the big puppet. In our family, it was a stage set, with children who neither moved nor spoke. Childhood is not always the idyllic paradise we wish it to be. The villains and monsters of fairy tales can be confused with real-life parents who can also be villains and monsters. Reality is a changeable commodity, especially with parenting such as ours. A hurricane mix of schizophrenia, alcoholism, sadistic violence, and sexual abuse. Chapter 4, A Pastiche of the Abnormal. The insanity never stopped. Who could forget the time we had all assembled for supper, realizing as we looked around us that the walls of the room had been redecorated in a novel manner. The painting, The Last Supper, which customarily hung above Dad's head, was conspicuously absent. In its place was a torn-out page from Playboy magazine, the centerfold. Draped across the wall lamp next to it was a soiled B-cup cotton bra. Randomly tacked to the adjoining walls were numerous women from Playboy, all of them naked in seductive poses. Our shabby, drab dining room had become a French Quarter bordello, a Middle Eastern kasbah of languorous, wanton concubines and odalisques. We dared not move, even to draw a breath, for fear of brushing up against the pendulous breasts and fleshy buttocks. Careful lest our cotton school blouses be smeared by lusty crimson lips which could have defrocked a dozen priests. Porcine thighs, creamy rounded shoulders, and heavy-lidded, temptatious eyes promised forbidden pleasures. The flesh pots of Sodom surrounded us. Pagan temples of harlots and courtesans had transformed our eating space into a seraglio, oozing with libidinous desires and unspeakable carnal appetites. Tense and mute like Quaker maids, we girls stood in awe of this decadence. What were those women doing up on our walls anyway? They surely bore no resemblance to our mother, a different species entirely. Head bowed, she sat limply at the table, her short brown hair bobby-pinned unstylishly behind her ears. A faded house dress hung from her lanky shoulders and bony arms, hung almost apologetically from limbs that were starved for calories and protein, not to mention love and protection. No, these lusty femme fatales were no sisters of hers. Accustomed as we were to Dad's extremes, this photo-plastered violation of our dining room was excessive, even for him. Cheeks rouged by the redness of our shame, eyes burning with unshed tears, it was not necessary to look around at each other to know we were all equally mortified. "Cleanliness is next to godliness," began Daddy, pointing up toward the offending bra which dangled just above his head. Whose was it? Why had he been rummaging through our dirty clothes and bedroom drawers in the first place? My thoughts were silenced as his voice crescendoed louder and louder in self-righteous anger. He denounced our collective dirtiness as spiritual defilement, then spiraled illogically into abstruse realms of sacrilege and heresy, esoteric dogmas of which I was certain only priests, rabbis, and other holy men could comprehend. Aren't you all ever so saintly, lining up for church every Sunday, praying with 3 hands? Sanctimonious holy rollers, hypocrites, every single one of you, he roared, blue eyes glacial with contempt. This is the path you Jezebels are treading, the destiny of God-forsaken sluts like you. His hand splayed toward the display of naked women. With that careless passing of his hand like a mad magician with his wand, he had transformed the lot of us into scarlet women, Lolitas all. 10, 14, 16-year-old Hester Prynne's, scarlet of face, not of letter, as we sat there silent with shame, silent like our mother, guilty of crimes that had no meaning to us. We were the horrors of Babylon, and Dad demanded we look long and hard at our sisters in sin there upon the walls as he continued to drain the Bible of verses and parables describing our doom. It was a challenge to find a place to safely rest one's eyes with all the nakedness besieging us. I could not look at the towering inferno which was Dad, his arms still flailing wildly, like Night of the Iguanas' Reverend Shannon calling down thunderclouds of damnation upon the lot of us. Finally, my eyes settled on that forlorn B-cup bra which had begun this whole drama. With only 3 changes of underwear apiece, we liked to keep them on as long as possible, especially with the ongoing threat of the underpants check, a dreaded daddy ritual devised to ensure our cleanliness. Any time, day or night, he could approach us with underwear check, and we were expected to drop our drawers on the spot for inspection. The very thought made me instinctively press my fingertips against the lower edge of my panties. Surely he would not call out that command to complete this night of disgrace. No, he was far too busy calling down the gods of pestilence and retribution, a straw pontiff delivering his Sermon on the Mount. It would never end. Shutting my ears as best I could, I looked up to the space above Dad's head where the Last Supper used to hang, now occupied by the fleshly red-lipped centerfold. Mentally, I took paintbrush and palette, squeezing out an assortment of blues, yellow, greens, white, and browns. Then painstakingly, inch by inch, I restored sanctity and order to that space by recreating one brushstroke at a time, Christ, his 12 disciples, the loaves of bread, and finally, the linen-draped table. Part 2 of Birds of Passage. On Valentine's Day, 1965, the police pulled up in our driveway and took Dad away in handcuffs. That's the opening scene in this chapter, titled Arrest and Lamentations, Farewell to Sanity. The lamentations I can tell you plenty about, but the arrest, what is the crime? What, God damn it, was he arrested for? You want the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Well, it's not that easy. We can't tell you the whole truth because none of us really knows what it is. Who was molested? How many times? Which of the daughters? 3? All of them? As many crimes as we can remember, an equal number have been forgotten. Treacherous, violent parental actions create dangerous and painful memories. Memories that can destabilize you, paralyze you, make you crazy, and sometimes even kill you. So the human body developed a natural defense against trauma to protect us from memories of such searing magnitude. Call it amnesia, repression, suppression, fugue state, call it anything you like, but its effect is universally similar: to restore peace and achieve homeostasis so life can go on. Following Dad's arrest, the official court-generated document describing his crime reads, 1 count of carnal knowledge of a minor, a prosy adjustment, a gross maladjustment, if you will, of details and events deliberately minimized to speed passage of a civil crime through a 1960 legal system anxious to save on expenses incurred by a jury trial. So who was molested? Who was not? Who was beaten? Who was spared? We were all violated in one way or another, all of us, along with our mother. Some of us remember a lot, some a little. Some do not remember anything at all, but the signs are there, the disturbing signs that lay beneath our unwilling memories. Hymens that were broken long before puberty. Phobias about big black hairy spiders and rat tails and mice. Difficulties with intimacy and sexual relationships. Chronic sleep disturbances, nightmares of being trapped and held against our will by faceless demons. We remember selectively and we forget selectively. The mind makes its own arrangements. But don't you want to know? Don't you want to know if you were molested? Ask well-meaning friends. Why don't you undergo a hypnosis? Are you kidding? Why in God's name would I want to remember my father forcing himself on me? What a ghastly image, were it true, to forever hold in my mind. Elaine's theory of reverse hypnosis makes more sense. She once asked her therapist, is it possible to use hypnosis to help you forget instead of remember? Pontius Pilate rinsed his hands symbolically, not realizing that no amount of scrubbing would ever rid him of his sin. Nor could Lady Macbeth ever cleanse entirely from her royal hands the stain of that damned spot. Do you think it would be any easier for me or any of my sisters to obliterate the terrible picture of Dad's crimes against us, once we had willfully called them back into our minds? Memory loss protects us. We do not wish to lift the veil of remembrance. The loss of memory is a gift, a kindly protection to keep us safe from the fearsome specter of our past. Chapter 21, I'll Fly Away. Mom's life was a minefield of Sophie's choices, a littered landscape of potential catastrophes for all of us were she to choose carelessly. And in that peculiar and very personal pathology of thought which determines choice, it seemed Mom found herself more than a few times lost and adrift in the nether realms of the subconscious. How else can we explain this remarkable event from her past? In 1959, Mom at 43 was in labor in a Spokane hospital in the process of giving birth to Del Curtis, her 10th child. 12 years later, in 1971, she was again at a local hospital for a long overdue gynecological exam. "So, Rose," inquired the doctor, glancing up from his speculum, "when did you have your hysterectomy?" Startled, Mom replied, "Never. Why do you ask?" "Because," the doctor was now carefully choosing his words, "because you have no uterus. Yet according to your chart, you've given birth 10 times. In complete astonishment, Mom could only repeat she had never had a hysterectomy, and at appointment's end, clutching her prescription for massive doses of calcium injections to restore her thoroughly depleted skeletal frame, she was utterly humiliated that such a thing could have happened without her knowledge or permission. Not surprisingly then, in the years to follow, the case of Mom's missing uterus generated a great deal of family discussion and conjecture. Since she had not been to any doctor in the 12 years subsequent to Kurt's birth, and ruling out sorcery, witchcraft, or divine intervention, it seemed obvious that her obstetrician had performed the surgery. But how could he have dared to do so without her consent? Were not ethics still bound to the Hippocratic Oath? Or did the doctor think he was doing her a favor? This fertile, yet malnourished welfare mother with a house full of kids and possibly more to come? A fine lesson in adult ways for us children. Was this how the world operated? With a different set of rules for poor people? We could go to the hospital with pneumonia, TB, seizures, any perfectly respectable illness, and return home missing a vital organ or body part. But then again, what if Mom had agreed to the surgery, maybe while under anesthesia, and then had forgotten all about it? Mom never did resolve the puzzle of her missing uterus, and would not even consider a lawsuit against her OBGYN when we suggested it. The anticipated millions of dollars in compensation dancing like sugar plums in our impoverished little heads.